Hallelujah. Good evening, good morning, good night. Wherever you are, good afternoon, wherever you are in the universe. You're the moon, you land on one of the stars. Good evening and good morning and good night to you. Welcome to Voice in the Wilderness. And we are set to go into another segment, if you will, another part, another section in this series, a peek into the Satan, a peek into Satan. That's my topic, but sometimes I look at a topic and say, I think this sounds much better. Well, fair game. That's fine. That's good enough for me. But we're still into the next segment of a peek into Satan, the Satan, the adversary, the devil, the accuser of the brethren, the whatever terms, the different terms he's called, the serpent, that fox, that devil, that, you know what I'm saying? We have been in this is probably the fourth or the fifth part, but I broke it up into like different segments of series. Like I did two on the word enemy. I think I did one on the serpent, which is I think the very first one. And I did two on the enemy, the word, what it signifies, what it means, the plethora of ways it can go. And last week we started the Satan, the adversary, right? It's kind of two in one, but we kind of narrow it into one for now. We may have a third part to cover that specific word, Satan. We may mix it up in this segment, and time wise, we may add another part to this to tie it all up, right? Again, the tie it all up is not. Don't take me verbatim, because it's the Word of God. And the Word of God is ever living, it's ever sure, it's moving, it's continually not changing, but it's continually changing people. It's continually changing ideas and ideals, right? For the better, of course. And so that's the power of the Word. It's sharper than any two-edged sword. It's faster than a bullet. It's stronger than a train. It's like a locomotive, as the Spider-Man thing go. Superman, sorry. It dives, it goes, leaps and bounds, and it has that effect, okay? Ultimately, it is given to us to change us, to transform us into his image, right? Which we have been struggling to do from not from day one, but from the get-go, from the very beginning. It's been a struggle, right? So, in this second segment, we're going to start with a little synopsis of what we already covered. We went at length into, and if you have your Bibles, which I would recommend you do get your Bible, get a Bible, whether it's a physical Bible, a tablet Bible, a phone Bible, whatever Bible you have, get it. And turn to the scriptures when I call. If I say we're going here, we're going there. And so on and so forth. Because I need your eyes to read the words. It mightn't be the exact words, because we have so many variations, so many translations, if you will. But at least you'll be reading. And hopefully some of the words and the intent and the ideals that the verses and the words stir up would captivate your mind and transform us into that image that we all holding on to. Amen. So we're going back to last study, 1 Chronicles 21, I think is 1 Samuel 24. Those are the two. Let me confirm that. 2 Samuel 24, not 1 Samuel, sorry. So 1 Chronicles 21, 2 Samuel 24. The first few verses in those chapters depict the same, they speak to the same, the narrative is based on the same story. It's the story of God having an issue with Israel. In Samuel, that's what it says. God, Jehovah, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the God of all gods, the Mighty One, El Shaddai, that one, the preeminent one, even though there is no other, but I will continue to say it like that. He had an issue with Israel, as he always does. Israel, if you, again, point to that, most people point up to the top right now. If you follow my channel, I think one of the very first topics, who is Israel, I covered. I want you to go listen to that. No topic covered is covered blank, is like a blanket cover, right? Because we don't know everything. Paul said we prophesy in part, we see in part. So that's all we can do, right? Is speak those things that are shown to us. So if you go into that teaching and listen and follow the trajectory of what I'm talking about, when we talk about Israel, in 2 Samuel 24, Jehovah had an ought against Israel. That's against the believing people, people who claim they believe in him, people who say they believe God. We believe you, God. We believe you. We will do whatever you say. And then turn around and not do what he says. And as I've said before, every king demands loyalty. So if a king gives a command, he expects his subjects to proceed, to obey that command, right? If he's a righteous king, which our king is, Jehovah Elohim, the King of Kings that I just talked about, the God over every other God, even there is no other God, because he said there's no God like but me, or there's no God like me, however you want to say it. Listen, he is supreme. His demands is no less than earthly king. Right? He has his instructions. The people who say, the people in the narrative calls those people Israel. Right? But again, if you follow the teaching, my teaching on who is Israel, you would understand how I perceive Israel. When Israel is supposed to be those nations, those people, those human beings who claim to believe in the Creator Elohim, in the Creator God, in Jehovah, the Creator God. And if you say you believe, and he has his instructions, and you're not doing them, you're not obeying them, you're not following them, guess what? He's gonna have an ought against you. Right? And he's not going to accept your sacrifices. He's not going to accept your offerings until you and him deal with this ought. Remember, Listen to this. Yeshua said in Matthew 5, first of all, he didn't come to destroy the Torah or the prophets. He came to perform them. He came to do the instructions, to follow the instructions to the fullness of them, so that we will see, that we will get the picture of how we are to proceed in life, in this life that we are given. And then as you read, he gives examples of how to follow these instructions. And one of the things he talked about down in Matthew 5, past in the 20 verses 20s, going down there, he talks about you with your offering or your sacrifice, right? If you bring your offering to the altar, he says, and you realize, wait a second, you remember, wait a second, my brother has an ought against me, or I have an ought against my brother. What did he say? What is his instruction that we are to follow, we are to do? We are to leave our offering at the altar. Don't offer it, don't present it. Don't korban it. You can't come near to him. Or put your offering back in your pocket and go restore the relationship with your brother. Restore that relationship. Get that ought, get that tension or whatever it is you have with your brother. Get it out of the way. And then when you get it out of the way, do what you have to do. Get it settled. Let forgiveness reign. Let peace reign. Right? Forgiveness and peace. Those are two elements of the fruit of the Spirit. And then you could go back to the altar now with your offering. And then he's going to receive you. Because you remember, Yeshua also said, if you don't forgive men their disobedience, how you expect God to forgive you yours? So there is this cycle, okay? If you want to call it a cycle of forgiveness, right? Whereby you must forgive others so that you will be forgiven. If you don't forgive, you can't receive forgiveness. If you don't give, you can't, nothing will be given to you. These are teachings that Yeshua himself taught. Who was Yeshua? The bread of heaven. The Father come down in human form. He and his Father are one. He only speaks what his Father speaks. So if Yeshua is saying it, that means Daddy's saying it too. So he's just regurgitating what Papa say. So it's not his teaching per se, it's Daddy's teaching. So when we obey what he says, we obey what Daddy say. When he says, if you see me, you see Daddy. Well, wait a second. You, Yeshua, how looking at you is looking at him? Because everything he does is what he did. Everything he says is what he says. Everything about him is a reflection in a mirror to him. So there's no difference. There is no variations. Jesus isn't more graceful than the dad. The dad isn't more brutal than Yeshua. Or brutal may be a bad word. The dad is not more stern than Yeshua. That's the things we human beings say. The Old Testament, God is harsh and he's so stringent and so strict and rigid. And Yeshua comes and Yeshua is so graceful, full of grace, as John said in John 1. Well, Daddy is full of grace. Because you cannot separate them. And this is what we have been doing for centuries. We've been separating them. We've been separating them for centuries. So what we are talking about is how we perceive the believers of Jehovah wasn't acting in belief. They wasn't doing, they wasn't obeying. So God had an issue and he took it up with them. But God, the way God does things is not the way we do things. As he said in Isaiah, my ways are not your ways. Your ways are not my ways. My ways are higher than your ways. And in these two instances that we are looking at, that's what that's who he is. One narrative says both narrative says there's an ought against Israel. One narrative says is God had the ought against Israel. The other narrative says Satan stood up against Israel. If you standing in between those two narratives, you ask yourself the question, is God Satan? Right? You wonder, why did this person, this narrator, why did this scribe, this writer, why did he choose Jehovah? Why did the other narrator, the other narrative, the other writer, the other scribe says that Satan? Could have said this Satan. It would have amount to the same thing. Saying Satan could be a adjective, as I said before, or noun, right? Because the word Satan is same as the word adversary. And I believe when you read the Samuel narrative, the narrative in 2 Samuel 24, you get a better picture. Because there you see Jehovah has an ought against Israel, and he stood up against them. Jehovah stands up against Israel because they are operating in a disobedient manner towards him, not towards Satan, towards him. So he himself becomes their adversary. And this idea is depicted throughout the biblical narrative. God had promised us, if you don't do the things I ask you to do, you won't get the things I promise you that I will give you. If you disobey me, I will become an enemy to you. And if you just if you have a biblical program on your laptop or your computer or your phone or your tablet, just search the word enemy. And it will pop up in various places where he says, I will be now if you're doing right, if you're doing good, he says, I will be an enemy to your enemies. But if you're doing wrong, guess what? I will be your enemy. I will be an enemy to you. He says that in plethora of places. It's how it is. It is how it is. But what do? We blame the enemy for acting like an enemy, instead of looking at our own selves and say, wow, my enemy has raised up against me. What did I do to provoke it? What did I say? How did I act? You may not have done anything. It may just be Jehovah is proving you, pruning you. Just like we went into Job when we talked about the enemy. Guess what happened to Job? Job was pruned and proved. Or he might be trying to get a message onto you to say, hey, straighten up and fly right, as the old folks would say. Straighten up and fly right, because the way you're going ain't the way I want you to go. So I need to bump you. I need to tap you on the left side, tap you on the right side to keep you on the straight. You're veering right. What did he tell? He said, don't go to your right or to your left. Just do everything I tell you to do. Don't add anything. Don't subtract anything. Don't go right. Don't go left. Just keep going forward in what I ask you to do. We know the stories. We've read the Bible. Some of us trillions of times. I'm being hyperbolical. Or hyperbolic. Right? Obviously, I don't know anybody who can say they've read the Bible trillions of times. That's a lot of times. Right? But we've heard, we've read, and we should be familiar with what is said in the Bible. The thing is, most of the time we don't believe it. We don't believe it, and we don't believe it. You know how I know, you know how anybody else know? Because you don't act like you believe it. Your actions, the things you do, the things you say, the way you act, proves to God, to yourself, and to people who might be peeking in that you don't believe it. You say you do, but you actually don't. And that's the fine line. That's the thin line. And a lot of people are operating in that thin line. A lot of humanity. So that's what we went into last week. And so that's where we start. Is God the adversary? Because the writer of Chronicles could have said an adversary stood up against Israel, or the adversary stood up against Israel. Could have said that, because that's what Satan means. But the writer of Chronicles chose the word Satan. Chose that word. See, and sometimes when you choose a word, or when somebody chooses a word, it channels you in a certain direction, right? Had I hate to talk politics. Worse yet, even talk about religion, because you especially with people who they say, well, I believe in a higher power. And when you hear somebody say that, that's a sign for you to just, you know what, I don't want to have this conversation. Why? Because people who say I believe in a higher power don't really believe in a higher power, or they don't really know anything about believing in this higher power that they say they believe in. You know why I say that? Because of when you use that again, remember, when I say words, or you say words, or anybody speak words, they immediately kind of direct things in a certain way. So when somebody say, I believe in a higher power, they're not necessarily saying, I believe in God. If somebody say, I believe in God, I believe there is a God, that person speaks with a little more conviction. Now, they may still be off the cuff somewhere, but the word God is kind of pointed. It's like an arrow. It's shaped and it's going in a certain direction, right? But when you say I believe in a higher power, that arrow is like fatter and the point is like wider. So when it hit the mark, it is not hitting like the dead on spot. It's hitting like a plethora of, it hits on a line or a circle or something. It hits in a broader perspective because what is a higher power? What is that? What does that mean? I believe in a higher power. See what I'm saying? See where I'm going with that? And conversation kind of was going that direction. And instead of mashing my brakes and saying, you know what, turn off my engine, I'm done. I don't want to continue this conversation. I continue the conversation. And boy, I tell you. But thankfully, that the person involved is not their hearts are not like wicked, right? This is a person who you can have a conversation with and you could agree to disagree at the end of the conversation. And everything is still going to be okay. You'll still be cordial. You all will be friends. It's my friend, my coworker, and my friend. So that speaks volumes to the character of the individual. An individual who can have a conversation and about something and still not hold it against the person who we had the conversation with. And that's awesome. And I love that about this particular person. And so that's that person. And I love that. I think that's awesome. Right? To have to be like that. You know, somebody who's not going to hold, because I'm not a person like that. I don't hold animosity against people. Sometimes people rub you the wrong way. Sometimes we are all human beings. So yes, you can get to that point where you want to hold on to something. You want to, you're mad at this person to the point where you just want to lash back. And you might lash back in a variety of ways. But when you come to your senses, you realize, crap, that's not even the way I'm supposed to respond anyway. You see what I'm saying? And thereby you kind of boil back down and come back to that place of sensibility. And then you kind of talk about it. You've asked for forgiveness, you forgive, and you move on. And you don't look at that and hold that over the person's head like a sword, waiting for that person to do it again so you could chop off the neck. No, that's not in me to be bitter. That's bitterness, right? So we are talking about perception. We are talking about having this mindset to understand things that we read, to look at things from a perspective of, we're looking from top down. We're not talking down. I hope I'm not talking down to you. I don't want to talk down to you. I want to speak with you, right? And I want to show, however, in speaking with you, I want you to understand that I speak, at least try, let me say it that way, to look at things from the top-down perspective, from the higher place, because if he tells Isaiah, if Jehovah tells Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, and your ways are not my ways, and he goes on to describe the gulf between the two ways of thinking, I have to see that. We're like, wow. So I have to challenge the way I think. And I have to say to myself, if he says that the way I think is not the way he thinks, then wow, I have to kind of take my thoughts up there to where he is, right? And read everything I read about him and what he says. I have to look at that from this position, not from this position, not from being a human being, but from being in his position. What does he mean? What is his will to what is being said? See what I'm saying? In some of the harsh things about life that he talks about in the biblical narrative, we are dealing specifically with the biblical narrative, regardless of where we go in our conversation. Whether we talk about politics, whether we talk about life, whether we talk about leaders, leadership, whether we talk about children, old people, young people, we talk about technology, it doesn't matter what we talk about it from a biblical perspective. And from a biblical perspective, top down. In other words, what is God's intent? What is his will by saying what is said in this particular place? You see what I'm saying? That's how we look at things in this ministry. That's how we look at things in this heart, right? And I call this ministry this heart because I'm the leader of the ministry. So I'm setting the pattern. I'm setting the perspective. I'm setting the spirit, if you will. The tone. Obviously, not me specifically, but the way God is, giving it to me, just like what Moses did. I'm not comparing myself to Moses. No. I'm just saying, God took Moses up and showed Moses the tabernacle and showed him how did. So Moses saw what God was showing him, and now Moses had to do it. He had to build it on the earth. And could you imagine Moses is telling the people, okay, this is how we're gonna make the curtains. And then the people who making the curtains started asking, well, why we have to do it this way? Why we can't do it this way? We should do it that way. That don't make no sense. This make more sense. You see how it could turn into something crazy, right? And that's not the way of God. God does everything decently and in order. So when there is disorder, God had to come, he straightened it out. Right? He straightened it out. Okay. Talk about Dathan and these people who looked at Moses and be like, well, why do you get to do all the things? Why do you get to choose who's this and who is that? Who put you in that position? You see what I'm saying? And he opposed Moses. And guess what? Go read the story. You see how God dealt with him. And Moses interceded too. Look at Aaron and Miriam. They opposed Moses. Miriam was like, no, that's the brother. That's Moses is Miriam and Aaron's brother. They're brother and sisters. Blood by blood. Same father, same mother. But they opposed them because they're saying, well, why does he get to be the Charles in charge? That's a idiom, Charles in charge. I'm not depicting any specific person, but Charles in charge is an idiom meaning the person in charge. Why does he get to be Charles in charge? Right? And what happened to Miriam? What happened to Aaron? What happened to Miriam? And did Moses go along with the idea that Moses interceded for them? Yes, they got punished, but Moses still had to intercede. Right? So this is the way of Elohim. This is the way of Jehovah. And we have to elevate our perceptions and our thinking to his way. Why? Because his way is higher than our way. If we keep it down to our way, we will never understand a lot of things that he says. For instance, this is a tough one. This is a very tough one because he says it, right? Talking about the disobedient son. I had a hard time pronouncing that word disobedient, right? In the book of Leviticus or somewhere there, he talks about the disobedient son, right? The disobedient child. And he says, if you have a disobedient son, you talk to him, you chastise him, he still insists on being disobedient, then the parents are to take him to the elders, right? And let the elders talk to him. And if he still insists on being disobedient, the instruction is, the Torah is, stone him to death. Right? And thereby put away the evil. Now, that's harsh. I agree. That is harsh. And I have two sons. And I'm telling you, my older son, we were having a discussion, brought that up and said, you going to take me and would you stone? That is brutal. From a human perspective, from an earthly perspective, it's brutal. Now, how do I take this Torah, this instruction that is written and given to me, how do I take that and apply it? Well, before I apply it, I have to go up and understand it. I have to see it from his perspective. I have to try to understand, well, what is he seeing and what his perspective on it is. And the way I do that is read it, say it like he says it, and talk to him and ask him to, hey, can you, guess what? If you lack wisdom, if any man, James says it, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask Jehovah, who is going to give you wisdom. Jehovah is a liberal when it comes to certain things. He's a conservative when it comes to other things. So he's both liberal and conservative. Well, how you could say that? Who created humanity in the first place? He did. So the human who is a dictator, somebody else didn't create him. It's the same God. Is God a dictator? No. In certain instructions, it could be perceived that he is. But from our perspective, from our perception, how we look at him, we think he's a dictator. As I told you about the conversation I had last week, which was, I don't ever want to have that conversation again. And my friend said, yeah, I don't want to go that route no more. And we agreed, and we're like, you know what? We're still good. A person says he don't understand. We was talking about politics and Putin and them and the stupid stuff, the crazy stuff that's going on. You know, if God is talking to Putin, how come God can't make Putin stop doing what he's doing? I'm like, well, again, you have to understand how God operates. When you make a broad statement like that, it shows you don't understand how God operates, right? Like the people who say, well, if there is a God, why does God allow bad things to happen? The people who say that don't understand how God operates. They don't understand God. They don't have a relationship, or their relationship is not like, ace boon coon. This is an old term, ace boon coon. It's like, that's my dog, that's my best friend, that's my dad kind of relationship. It's a kind of a far-fetched relationship where you out there somewhere and I'm down here and I'm the one feeling the pinching. So I'm saying why, why are you allowing all these things to happen? But that's how the human mind is. I am not saying, what can I do to change this? If 8 point something billion humans on the face of the earth, take this thought for a second. If 8 point something billion people on the face of the earth decide that they're going to talk to God every day and have this verbal conversation back and forth going on with God, and try to change the way they think and do things in an upright manner, I promise you, the world is going to change. But again, I'm talking foolishly because that's not going to happen. And if you think it's going to happen, I'm just letting you know it's not going to happen. Right? If you read the book, read the Bible from front to back, it ain't happening, bro. It ain't, why? Because we have this thing that's called free. You have a right to decide and to choose how you think, what you will do. You have that right. Okay? And God is the one who created you. Well, he created you with that free will mentality. He would love it if you take your free will and choose his way. He would absolutely love it. And I guarantee you, he's going to do everything he can, everything he must, everything he will do, which he already kind of has done. He's going to continue to do that to kind of bring you along. If you decide, I ain't listening to him, I doing my own thing, I'm going my own route, I don't care, because there's many people like that, then there's nothing. I can't make you turn around. You see what I'm saying? I will still talk to you. I'll still love you. I'll still say, hey, if you give me a chance, I'll still explain to you why you should turn around. But I can't make you turn around. Why? Because you have your free will and I have my free will. And my free will is not given to me to dominate your free will. But that's another issue we have in the world today. Okay? We are still talking about 1 Chronicles 21 and 2 Samuel 24. We're still talking about that because there's a principle there. There's an ideal there. There is, and let me say this about principles and laws and statutes and ideals. They are there forever. You can't change them. I can't change them. Once it's there forever. You could work against it or you could work with it and for it. But you can't change it. And that's what we are trying to do. We, human beings, are trying to change things that we cannot change. So remember that teaching I did some time ago, and I used the prayer of serenity. We don't believe the prayer of serenity. No, we don't. We are twisted in our perception of things. And so the idea that I'm going to accept the things that I cannot change, right? And change the things that I can't. That idea of accepting the things I can't change, because there's a segment of human society who believe that there are things that we must change, that we have to change, even though we cannot change it. We are not gods. You can't change that. I can't change that. We were created by God. There's only one God. He said it time and time and time again. And there are human beings who refuse to believe that. They think they're God. So they do everything in their power. Some of them have wealth and prestige and all the necessary tools to create a world for themselves that will give them the idea that they could be whatever they want to be. But the message to you and to they are, no. You think you would achieve some level of success. You think you're getting somewhere. The end result is you are not going to get anywhere. Why? Because God is categorically clear. There is none like him. There is none but him. He is the creator of all the universe. It belongs to him and not another. And he can do whatever he does because he doesn't require your permission or my permission. Again, if you're a living human being and you don't believe that, then you will, you're doing your own thing out there. Right? If you don't believe that you will pay, that you will have to answer for the things you do, if you do not believe that, then you're going to live your life on that road. So when politicians or people talk about separating what you, like if you're a leader, you can't bring what you believe in your governing of whomever, that's a lie. That's a fallacy. That's a trick. There is no way possible for you to govern anything, for you to rule anything outside of what you believe. That is impossible. It's impossible. I don't care who you are. God can't do it. God won't do it. That's not how he does things. And if he created us, you think you could do it? God does nothing outside of himself. Everything he does, he seeks, as it is written in the biblical narrative, the counsel of his own will. He talks to people, and people speak out of their heart things that he appreciates, things that he agrees with. And if you speak something out of your heart that he agrees with, he commends you for that. Look at the relationship with him and Moses. Again, look at the relationship with him and Enoch. He loved Enoch so much. Him and Enoch was so tight. Enoch's wife went looking for him and she couldn't find him. Because Enoch walked with God and then he was no more. And I'm saying all of that inside of this two narratives of the biblical passages, 1 Chronicles 21, 2 Samuel 24. Jehovah becomes an adversary to Israel. Why? Because they say they will believe him. They say they will do everything he tells them to do. And then they did not. So they were lying. They're liars. So he took them to task. And he used their own king, who is a man after God's heart himself, who loves God. Read the Psalms. Even God says, God is the one who said David was a man after my own heart. David didn't say that. God, Jehovah Elohim said that about another human being, about a human being, depicting that human being as a man, a human after the heart of God. David then writes, as the deer panted for the waters, so my soul panted after you, or my soul longs for you. Because that's how David lived his life, as a human being who longed for the presence of God, who longed for the mercies of God, who longed for the faith of God, for the power of God, for the anointing of God, for the protection of God, for the gifts of God. He longed for it. What do you long for? What do I long for? The same thing. That's where my heart is. Does that make me perfect? No, it doesn't. Didn't make David perfect either. But Jehovah Elohim stood up as a Satan, stood up as an adversary against the people who said to him, we're going to do everything you say. And then they didn't. And then we get mad at him because he mad at us. But instead of us looking at our own selves, we get mad at him and we turn our backs. We say he doesn't exist. We don't want to have nothing to do with him. You know, we find ourselves in these little cliques and these little places in life. And I'm not talking about you and me per se. I'm talking about all of humanity. When I speak to all of humanity. Not for all of humanity, but I speak to all of us, including myself, because I'm a human like everybody else. And that's how people, they slip away. They back away. They fall away. They get away. They run away. Because, hey, God, I feel feminine. I want to be a female. But God said, no, that's not how I created you. Look between your legs. What's there? That's who you are. But God, that's not how I feel. So people want to go after their opinions and after how they feel. Guess what? David did the exact same thing. David talked about, he called his general, number one, top general in the military. Hey, Joab, go count how many soldiers I have. The same Joab who later on in their relationship gave his loyalty to another person, a different person who was fighting to be king too. The same Joab, this same, quote unquote, disloyal Joab, right there in his face, turned to the king and said, listen, David, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go count how many soldiers you have. God is going to, listen, if you need 10,000 more, God is going to provide that. If you need 100,000 more, he didn't say these words, but that's what he meant. Whatever you need, God will give it to you. You don't have to go find out how much you have. And the biblical passage in verse 4 of 1 Chronicles 21 says, nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab. Let's think about that for a minute. If David is a human king and his word prevailed over another human general, another human leader, how much more the spiritual king, how much more the King of Kings, how much more His word will prevail over every other human being. How much more? Think about that for a second. And we have people going around speaking, beating their chest. I listened to an interview, can't say last night, it was this morning, early this morning, after midnight. 2 doctors, man. And they was sharing some things about what's going on in the world from the scientific medical perspective. Boy, I tell you. And one of the doctors talked about this word called humility. This word called humility. And he said, yeah, we are in another place and another time when we think we figured it out. The human being has this perception in their brain. We figure it out. We figure out things. This is how we're going to do things. And they're putting things in place to dominate and to captivate and to exert themselves over other human beings. And God is sitting and watching and laughing. Because they're operating like he doesn't exist. They don't believe in him. They never did. They never had. Or they did at one time and got disappointed for whatever the reason. And again, like I said before, walked away, backed away. Went far, went completely opposite. With the perception that I could be God because there is no God. I don't have to answer for what I am doing because when I'm dead, that's it. And many people believe these things. I think Paul or Peter, one of them talks about it. They came out from us. They were among us. And they came out from us because they were never really with us. How could that be? Because people use their free will to do what they think they need to do, despite what God says. What did the woman say in the garden? What was she told? The thought still prevails. When you talk about, listen, laws, statutes, ideals, okay, instructions, these things transcend time. They transcend time. So the thought and an ideal that was prevalent 50 years ago, and that's not too long ago, a thought and an ideal and a perception or principle or law or statute that was prevalent 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and let's go with the belief that is 50 million and 200 million and 10 billion years ago. If that's true, those thoughts and ideas and ideals transcend that time. They come from, if it's true that it's way back 1 billion years ago, they don't die. Thoughts and perceptions and ideals and ideas don't necessarily die. They transcend time and space. So when you look at his story, history, you wonder why history repeats itself. Why? Why do you think history repeats itself? Because thoughts and ideas and ideals and perceptions didn't change. It just transcends through generation, from generation to generation, from time through time. From the BCs to the ADs. From the 01s to 2s to 10s to 20s. It just, from the 18s to the 19s, from the 16s to the 17s, it transcends time. And so if you don't lift up your thoughts and ideas and ideals and beliefs to him, how can he wash them? How can he wash them? It's written in the new covenant to submit everything under the word, to submit it, every thought, take it captive and submit it. Put it under the word and let the word wash and examine that thought. Let the word sift through the thought. Let the word of God define the thought in captivity, in your mind, in your life. And when that process is complete, what comes out, what the word brings out, could go on forever. If you kick the word out, then the other part comes out and goes on forever. It doesn't stop. Nevertheless, the word of the king prevailed against Joab. And Joab had to go out and perform the duties he was asked to perform, or he was ordered to perform. And it goes on to say, if you read the story, that Joab still is holding on to this thought that this ain't good, man, Dave. He didn't, obviously, he's not going back and forth with the king, but in his own mind, while he's counting, he's saying to himself, this is bad, this is bad. And at one point, according to the narrative, he stopped counting. He said, you know what, I ain't doing this no more. And that is the way of a righteous man. See, a righteous man examines his ways. He hears the voice of God speaking to his heart. And even though he might be doing something that he might be going along with, at some point, he's going to have to say to himself, wait a second, I can't continue this. So what happens to that righteous man? God begins to talk to him more, talk to him more, talk to him more. But the righteous man has to stay on that route. He got to stay on that road. Okay? If he doesn't, then he veers off. And probably becomes what? Unrighteous. Says, verse 5, First Chronicles, we're still in there, First Chronicles 21. I want 5 minutes in. Verse 5, Joab gave up the sum of the census of the people to David. Listen, all those of Israel were 1,100,000 men who drew a sword. This was the strength of David's army. 1,100,000. And in Judah, this is in Israel, and in Judah were 4 570,000 men who drew the sword. So at a total, he's got 1,570,000 men. If my math is doing me any good here, 1,100,000, 470,000. So 100,000 plus 470,000 is 570,000. So he's got 1,570,000 strong military army. This is his army. And Joab's telling him, listen, you don't have to count. You don't have to know the number. Don't resort your comfort to based on the numbers you have. No. Find your comfort and your peace in him, who can supply every need according to his riches in glory. But no, David didn't do that. Verse 7. Remember we started verse 1? It said Satan stood up against Israel. Verse 7 says, God was displeased with this thing. Therefore, he struck Israel. So when you read 2 Samuel narrative and you come and you read 1 Chronicle narrative, you see the same story, different words. Again, the underlying question, is God Satan? Is God Satan? God is not Satan. If you look at it from that perspective of Satan being the devil, No, Satan means adversary. And so God himself will become your adversary. If you listen to my teaching on the essence of a male and the essence of a man and the essence of a woman. In the essence of a woman teaching, you would hear me say that when God said that it's not good for that the man should be alone, I have to make him a helpmeet. Well, in the whole context of what that helpmeet is the woman. But what she also is she stands opposite the man. And what does that also mean is not, she doesn't stand in opposition to the man. It means when the man looks at the woman, he sees a reflection of himself. That's what that means on the one side. On the other side, she can become his opposition, because opposition is part of the word opposite. You see, opposite, opposition. It's the same construct. It's part and parcel of the same word. They mean different things when you put it in proper context. And so the woman could think that she is created to be the man's opposition. I was told that one time by a woman. You don't know, I'm, God made me to keep you straight, oppose you in a way to keep you straight. No, that's not why God made you, sweetie. That's not why God made you. God made you to be a blessing to me. He made me so that I could bless you. We're supposed to be able to be a blessing to each other. A help meet. That's what it means, literally. A help, somebody to stand opposite. Stand with the person, not against the person. But you can stand with somebody, or you could stand against somebody. And if you stand against somebody, you become a Satan. you become an adversary. If you're standing against somebody who is a righteous person trying to do the right thing, you become an adversary. If you're standing against somebody who's trying to do the wrong thing, you're still an adversary. Doesn't change what you do. It just changes the side you're on. If you're standing against somebody who's doing the wrong thing, it puts you on the right side, because you're doing something wrong and I'm trying to prevent you from doing that wrong. I'm standing against you. I'm an adversary to you, but I'm an adversary on the side of righteousness. Oh gosh, I pray that somebody would understand what the Spirit of God is saying, because this is real. If you're doing the right thing, if you're operating in a righteous way, and I stand against you, trying to prevent you from doing a righteous thing, I have become your adversary still. But I'm an adversary on the wrong side, because I'm standing against righteousness. That's why Yeshua says, if you are not for me, you are against me. Even if you don't say it, even if you don't think it, even if you don't act it, right? If you are not for me, you are against me. So if you act in the ways that I don't stand for, I don't uphold, you are against me. You will be against me. You can't say, well, you are doing things in a righteous manner over there. I don't approve of it. And I'm going to wash my hand of it. I'm going to take no blame, no part in it. Can't do that. The mere fact that you don't oppose it in some way, if somebody's doing something unrighteous and you do not oppose it in some way, you are, in fact, acquiescent to it. Here's a question. What do you do when an unrighteous leader gives you an unrighteous instruction? What do you do? What did Joab do? You could tell by the narrative that he was wrestling with this thing. He was trying to be obedient to his king, but was wrestling with the greater king, because he knows this thing is not right. How could I do this? Look at Joseph. Look at Pharaoh. Pharaoh was a type of king. In Egypt, they call him Pharaoh. But that's a king. He's a type of king, right? He's a king. You can call him a king or a president or whatever term you want to give him as a top leader in the country. Some countries have prime ministers as their number one person. Some countries have kings and queens, right? Joseph was in the house of Pharaoh, tending to all the things belonging to Pharaoh. his family, his business, his people, they're just taking care of everything. You know the story. And Pharaoh's wife decide. An interesting thing I heard from listening to Nehemiah and Keith in one of their Torah portions. They talk about the fact that it's possible that Pharaoh was a eunuch. It's possible that Pharaoh couldn't have physical contact with his wife. It's very possible. As a matter of fact, it was said that that was a common thing in the day. Okay? But the wife was there nonetheless. She have needs nonetheless. She see Joseph nonetheless. Joseph look fine nonetheless. Guess what she decide? Well, if I ain't getting it from Pharaoh, I might as well get it from Joe. And she waited. She didn't do it like, hey, Pharaoh, you ain't giving me nothing, so I'm going to, is it okay if I, mess with Joe? She didn't do it that way. It was like upfront, I ain't condoning it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying. Even in doing what she was doing, she did it secretly. She waited until nobody was around. And then she made a move. What do you do when an unrighteous leader, because even though the girl was Pharaoh's wife, that's the king's wife. And let me tell you something. If you disobey the king's wife and think the king is going to pat you on your back and be like, yeah, man, you the man. Oh, boy, you have another thing coming, especially if he's not a righteous king. She's like, hey, Joe, let me talk to you for a second. It's just two of us. So, come on, man, let's get this on. What is Joseph's answer? How could, really, girl? You're fine and all that, but how could I do this thing against my God? He said, not my Pharaoh. Didn't call Pharaoh's name in his mouth. Well, did he? Can't remember. But he talked about God. He said, how could I do this thing against my God? Maybe he mentioned Pharaoh, right? Those details are not so important to the narrative I'm trying to say. I'm saying, what do you do when an unrighteous king gives an unrighteous instruction or Torah or order? What do you do? Do you do like Joseph and be like, how can I do this thing? I'm gone. And we all know the story because we all read it and we heard it so many times. Joseph took off and she grabbed his clothes and he still kept running and ran out of his clothes. He didn't run far because he got caught. He was brought back and put in prison because the wife said the wife changed the whole story. Jacob's mother changed the story too. When Jacob's mother told him, hey, you just obey me. Whatever happens, whatever curse comes with this instruction, I will bear it. That's what she told Jacob. Go read it. Am I condoning what Jacob did? No, I am not. Am I condoning what Potiphar's wife did? I am not. I'm just making statements of truth, making statements of fact. This is how this happened. what would you have done? Yeah, no, everybody be like, yeah, I'll be like Joe and run. Yeah. You could say that now because it didn't happen to you. You know what they say, hindsight is 2020. Everybody have perfect vision looking back. Everybody have a perfect vision when the thing is happening to the next person. When the shoe come on the other foot, when they knock come on your door, how do you respond? I could only hope that I respond in the right way. I pray to God that if that comes, I'm going to respond in the right way. That's all I could do. I'm going to be stupid to say, no, that's arrogance. That's ignorance. That's pride. That's the epitome of pride. But we don't care. We still do it. Sounds good. Feels good. Everybody hear you and be like, yeah, that's the kind of preacher we want. Yeah. Until the shoe come on the other foot. Until the knock come on the door. And the preacher did something that he never thought he would have done. And you remember what he said, and then what? You get mad at him. You get mad at God, and you walk away. Preacher did this. Look at him. When you should be listening to God all along. Because that man, full of mouth, as the old folks would say. Talk a big talk. But when the rubber meets the road, I'm telling you, this is how life is. We like to talk big. Me too. Sometimes I say stuff, I'll be like, I ain't know for, whoo, shouldn't say that. Sorry, Father. Really, you know what? I repent. I forgive me. And I'm learning every day. I'm learning. What James said? Be slow to speak. Be quick to listen. Don't be too quick to answer. But Joab is wrestling with this idea that David tell him go count, go count, go count, and that's the king. So I'm trying to obey the king because you disobey the king, and guess what? You don't know what the king could do. Ask Esther. See? Ask Esther. Esther didn't know what this king had in mind. She didn't know what he could have done. You know what she didn't know? I could die. This could cost me my life. So, seeing that I know that it could cost me my life, I'm not going to play Miss Big Queen. I'm not going to pretend to be like, he can't do me nothing because I'm his queen. I ain't going to be like that. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to fast. I'm going to pray. I'm going to prepare myself. Because if I go in there and he pull that sword and cut my head off, at least I'll be with the Father in heaven. So she fasted and she prayed. And then when the time came, she walked into that room. And you know what happened? You know the story? The king, I'm telling you, when Solomon said in the book of Proverbs that the heart of the king is in the hand of Jehovah, listen. The heart of the king is in the hand of Jehovah, and Jehovah will turn it any which way that he wants to turn it. And she walked up in that room after preparing herself. Xerxes, Artaxerxes, whatever his name is, as crazy as he was, because that's kind of how he was, unstable in his mental faculties. As nutty as he was, he stuck the scepter out. And he smiled, and his heart melted. This is just, I'm parleying with words. I'm parleying with the narrative. He stuck with the scepter and his heart melted because he saw his queen and he loved his queen and she just melted him. And he said, what do you want, girl? What can I give to you today? Listen, hey, listen, man. Ain't nothing could melt you like a good woman. You hear what I'm telling you? Oh, boy. Nothing in the world. No food. No steak. Nothing in the world could melt a man's heart like a good woman. And she captivates his mind and captivate his soul. And God just massaged his heart towards her in favor of her. And he saw her and his heart melted, his thoughts melted, his mind melted, and he was like, oh, here's my queen. Oh my God, Esther, you're so awesome. I love you so much. I would give you anything you want. What do you want? What can I do for you? Yep. Listen, this is God. It don't matter who, man, how crazy. This is God. This is the kind of things we don't believe. We don't believe that God could do this thing. See what I'm saying? We don't believe, or we don't try to believe, or we don't want to believe. It's an awesome thing. And it comes back to the proverb, which I would go into again. When a man's ways please Jehovah, he would make even his enemies be at peace with him. I can't say that verse enough because it is profound. It is mind-boggling. It is mind-warping, mind-blowing. It is elevating. Listen, if you keep saying that over and over again, it will put you in a place of such affirmation that you would be like Stephen. You would be being stoned and you smiling, looking up in heaven, talking about, I see heaven open and Yeshua standing at the side of the Father. And I said to him, Yeshua, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. He is being stoned. And this is his persona. This is his personality. This is his character in the midst of people throwing hundreds of stones at him. Are you serious? Paul in prison. They whoop his butt. They beat him down. Cast him in prison. And he's singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, making melody in his heart. This is his character. This is his personality. And the doors of the prison shake. And the gates open. And Paul tells people, don't go nowhere. Stay right there. This is just to show you, when you focus in on him, this is an example of what he can do. This is a snippet, a little taste. But in order to get our minds there, in order to get our personality there, in order to get our hearts there, our perceptions have to change. Our mindsets have to change. I am not your enemy. You is not my enemy. But if you are not on his side, you're not on my side. Because I am on his side. And as imperfect as I am, as imperfect as you are, if we both look up, if we all look up, 8 point, how much of a billion people, if we all look up and say, Father, show us the way, it's going to change. Unfortunately, some people looking up, some people looking across, some people looking up but across. Like I'm looking up but like at an angle, not straight up. You know what I'm saying? People say they believe, but they don't act like they believe. There are people who don't believe at all. They way cross on the other side. They ain't nowhere close to the line. They can't even. I believe in a higher power. They don't even want to call him God. I'm not poking fun at my body. He's young. Not that that means anything, but I get it. The world we're living in is nutty, it's crazy. People, you look at it. Look at it and tell me if this is how it should be. You tell me, is this how it should be? No. And a lot of people blame God. Well, God, do something about it. No, He has done what needed to be done. It's us. We have to look up. We have to begin to believe. We have to begin to do what He wants us to do. Stop blaming each other. Just do it. You do it. Don't look at your wife or your husband or your child. You do what you're supposed to do. And then maybe, just maybe, it's not a guarantee, because the will that you have is the same free will that your husband has, or your wife, or your child. I asked my buddy the question, how does a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old learn to defy their parents? Where do they learn it from? How did Eve learn to defy God in the beginning? Where did she learn that from? It's not the devil. He said, if you defy my rules, this is what will happen. Well, in order to check to see if you will, he have to now check to see if you will. And when he checked to see if you will, you didn't. You broke. You gave in. It's not the serpent's fault. It's your fault. Because you didn't check yourself. She didn't check herself. She didn't even check with her husband. And we are all required to check with yourself, or check with your husband, if you have one, or check with God. When you check with yourself, you check with God. Be like, hey, he said that, is that true? She didn't even go there. She didn't be like, that's when I said check yourself, that's what I'm talking about. Check with him, right? You check inward and you tap the resources that he gave you inward. That seed, that spirit, right? And then, what did he say again? No, if you eat from the fruit, you shall surely die. He went so far as to say surely. Wow. Maybe, you know what? I don't trust you. I was looking at, I looked at the movie 355. You know that movie? It's free on Peacock. And, they try to promote these female spies, or they're so good and stuff. They got their butt kicked, though. Golly, they got their butt kicked. Anyway, isn't it funny how when you're operating in that realm, that spy realm, I'm talking about a movie, okay? When you get information, when it's always, don't trust nobody. You can't trust nobody. That's kind of like a message that's relayed when spies find themselves in situations. Don't trust nobody. You can't even trust your boss. You can't even trust your brother. You can't even trust your sister. You can't trust the person who you work with. Don't trust nobody. In the movie, in the one of the Avengers, it was the same thing with Nick Fury, Don't trust nobody. Don't trust nobody. There's one person you can trust. Just one person that anybody could trust. Everybody could trust that one person. And that's him. You can trust him. But in order to ascertain that trust, you have to go to him. You have to know, I could trust you. So he say that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is good to eat from. Yeah, that's true. So and sift through the whole, you have to discern, right? That's what discernment means. That's what discerning means. It's to sift through. If you don't sift through stuff, you're not discerning. Discernment means to sift through things. That's how you come to an organized decision, a thoughtful decision, because you thought about it. You sifted it through, you used the word, and So he say that if I eat from that tree, I would be like you. I would be God. That's what he say. But you say, if I eat from the tree, I will die. Who do I believe? Do I believe him? Who created him? You did. Who created me? You did. Why would I believe him? He didn't create me. He ain't know nothing. You understand what I'm saying? He is created just like you were created. But you put your trust in him or her or whatever the serpent was. She put her trust in the serpent who was created just like her. From the same person, created from the same source. She didn't trust the source. She trusted the sub-source. Oh, gosh. And she became an adversary. She became an adversary because she withstood the instructions of Jehovah. And Jehovah became her adversary because he had to withstand the foolish decisions that she made. And so the man and his creator found themselves, or for want of a better way of saying it, found themselves in this adversarial relationship. And what does Jehovah say? What did Yeshua say about your adversary? He said, make up with your adversary quickly. Listen, if you have an adversary, make up with them quickly. Make up with them quickly. because they're taking you to court. They're going to make up with them quickly. I just read it. Ah, gosh, how did I get there? Let me see. He said, make up with your adversary quickly. Or did he say enemy? Hold on. Hold on, horses. I'm coming. E-N-E-M-Y. Did he say make up with your enemy quickly? Hold on. Okay, let's read this one. He said, Matthew 5:43, you have heard it that it was said to love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's not what you do. You love your neighbor and you love your enemy. He also said, when you're going down the road and you see your enemy's mule or animal or cow or whatever it is, something belonging to your enemy, escape from the enemy's property, get it and take it back to the enemy. This is the way God talks. These are the things God says. Make up with your enemy quickly. Romans 10 and 20 says, Romans 12 and 20. Paul writes, therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. Because when you take care of your enemy, what you are actually doing is when you are, what do you say? Bless your enemy, don't curse him. Oh, see, you all ain't like that because that's the devil. That's it. The devil in him caused him to come in against me like that. So I ain't trying to be nice to them because that's it. See? Are we really doing what we are supposed to be doing? Are we really obeying God? Are we? Are we? I don't know. Matthew 5 and 25. Agree with your adversary quickly. This is not me writing this. Matthew 5 verse 25. Yeshua, the God-man, the one who was one with God, the one who spoke everything God spoke, who did everything God does, who is just like God. When you see him, you see God the Father. He said, so God the Father said, agree with your enemy, with your adversary quickly while you are with him on the way. Lest perhaps the prosecutor deliver you to the judge, and the judge deliver you up to the officer and cast you into prison. Luke 12 and 58 says something similar. Luke 18 and 3 says, a widow was in that city. She often came to him saying, defend me from my adversary. You know the story about the widow? There was somebody terrorizing her, and she went to the judge. And she said, defend me from my adversary. Who is the just judge? Not the human judge I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one up there. You think you have an adversary coming after you, coming at you, for whatever the reason? You have to go to the just judge. You have to talk to him. He will dare tell you, well, if you behave yourself, I'll take him off your back. If your ways please me, I'll make the adversary be at peace with you. But you're acting a fool, so that's why I'm inciting him to get you straight, to chastise your butt, because I love you. So are you going to obey me, or are you going to continue doing what you want to do? See, we don't want to have these conversations. We don't want to have these conversations. We don't want to. Because it's easy for us to point the finger at somebody and blame them for everything that is going on. It's easy to do that. Because if I blame them, I get everybody to look at them. Nobody looks at me. Nobody see the underhanded things I do. Nobody see the crap I'm doing. Nobody sees that because I'm pointing them in everywhere else, away from myself. And everybody doing it. So everybody's under the impression that nobody is seeing them. There's one who sees all. There is one who sees all. So my brothers and sisters, we will close this session today, right here. And we will pick it back up again because we have to go into the word Satan and we have to read passages that the word is used, even in the New Covenant. And we have to ask ourselves, why is the narrators, the people who is writing these narratives, why are they, like I said in Chronicles, in First Chronicles, the narrator, the writer, the scribe could have said, an adversary stood up against Israel. He could have written, the adversary stood up against Israel. Could have written it like that. The writer in 2 Samuel 24 could have done the same thing because the two words that are used is the same meaning. But one narrator says Satan, the other narrator say God stood up as an adversary. He had an ought against Israel. Again, I would say, maybe perhaps you, sir, you, ma'am, maybe perhaps me, I, myself, maybe perhaps we are our own worst enemies. Maybe perhaps we stand up against God in things we do and say and the way we act. Maybe we ourselves are Satan's adversaries to righteousness. I'll leave you with that. Turning your Bibles to Numbers chapter 6. And we will close that wonderful passage, or those wonderful passages in Numbers chapter 6, verse 22 through 27. I was listening to Nehemiah Gordon and Keith Johnson in one of their Torah teachings about the Shekinah, the glory of God. And one of the things that they said was, I think specifically Nehemiah, was that the Shekinah, the glory of God in the Torah, in the instructions, was associated with the name of God, his name. Wherever his name was, that's where the glory fell. That's where the glory was. Same glory that we talk about. And it's no wonder that in this passage of scripture that we are going to read, is specifically designed and given and taught and given as instruction to put his name on his people. And he said, when he see his name, he will bless them. Maybe that blessing is the Shekinah, the glory of God over you. And your face will shine like Moses' face shone. Maybe that glory comes over you. And everybody have to back away because they see that glory. And instinctively they recognize that glory and be like, oh, let's not touch this one because he's got the glory on him. The Shekinah is on him. Listen to these words. Pay attention. Numbers 6, 22, through 27. And Jehovah spoke these words to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, this is how you shall bless the children of Israel. You shall tell them, Jehovah bless you and keep you. Jehovah make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Jehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Just so, or so, they shall put my name upon the children of Israel. And I, Jehovah, will bless them. Until next time. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Buen nuit. Buenas tardes. Buenas noches. Buenos días. Adios. Adieu. Peace. Deuces. Arrivederci. See you next time.